Good evening, everyone. It is very late Monday evening, February 14th. It's about to be Tuesday, February 15th. We are holding right now a mere 1 to 2 days, about 2 days before the development of a true major winter storm that is expected to develop here in the Midwest. Audience, it's lovely to have such an audience to cheer on, such snow lovers to cheer it on. Let's just go through the beginning of the storm and talk about everything that's going to be going on. We continue to have two different computer models which continue to forecast two different things. But let's talk about that a little bit later. We're going to start off with something that the Springfield National Weather Service, the Springfield, Missouri National Weather Service has explained so well. They actually take us to the very beginning of the storm. And if you have the Windy app, you could actually see this happening. Low pressure moves on to Washington State about now, perhaps even a couple hours ago. As it moves into the state, as it moves on land, the meteorologists are going to have a lot more information in regards to this system. And this is at least half, and perhaps it's a good portion, figuring out what's going on with the system right now as it moves onshore will be helpful in determining the track of the storm in a couple of days. But for right now, we have the ending of the heat wave over in the Arizona, Southern California area, where temperatures were very close to record highs, possibly even record highs. The strong February sun is detectable over there. It's even detectable at times here in Chicago. Anyways, we have this low pressure system, which is unique. It's moving into the Washington State area, and then it's going to be moving southeast, but mostly south into the California area. And what's really weird is that this thing does not have much Pacific moisture at all. It doesn't have much moisture at all. So there will be some mountain snows down in the southwest and things like that. Probably about a 29.7 low pressure system, fluctuating between 29.6 to 29.7, depending on the computer model that you look at. Okay, now that takes us through Tuesday, and it kind of redevelops again in the plains. We have this system then brings a 3 to 8 inch snowfall for Denver, Colorado Springs, Colorado, probably more like 3 to 6 for Denver, 3 to 8 for Colorado Springs. There's higher confidence in the snowfall amounts over in Colorado area. That's before the major complexities really kick in with the system. Very cold air, a short-lived but very cold, dry polar air comes in once again. It's an Arctic air mass that comes in from Canada. And it looks like eventually that high-pressure system will be about 30.4 and will dig pretty far down south. But that affects the Colorado area on Wednesday, and that moisture comes in up from the Gulf of Mexico, and that's going to be responsible for the 6 or 8 inches of snow in Denver and Colorado Springs. More like 6 inches again in Denver and the Colorado Springs. Now, as that's going on, we're going to see a south wind, originally a southeast wind, which will bring in warmer temperatures here in Chicago and over much of the Midwest. Those winds then become southwest on Wednesday, and that's when we see those temperatures really go up. We're talking about highs here in Chicago. There are going to be places which are going to be 50 degrees. This is very similar to the storm we had previously. We're going to see temperatures approach 50 degrees. There is, it's similar in a certain way, but I'll tell you there's one major difference as far as I'm concerned. There's one major difference, and that if you look at the computer models, this particular storm, you see the storm clearly, you see the track clearly, everything is clear, especially with the GFS model. And it is you have exactly the exact ingredients necessary to produce a major winter storm, which is defined as 6 inches of snow or more. Some of the precipitation might be falling as freezing rain or sleet, so that could put a little bit of a damper on those high snowfall totals. And we continue to have a machlokas, different shitas, different opinions, different approaches between the GFS model and the European computer model, which again we're going to talk about in just a second. Now, We have 1 to 2 inch of water equivalent. It's going to be coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, affecting much of the Missouri area, Arkansas, Louisiana. Severe weather potential exists for Wednesday and Wednesday night. The Storm Prediction Center has put parts of the Gulf states, including the southern plains, even parts of southern Missouri. We have some areas on a scale of 1 to 5. They're on a 2. On a 2, I believe that means there's a 15 to 25% chance for severe weather within a 25-mile radius. The major threat is going to be the large hail, but conditions are favorable for tornadoes as well. It's not being spoken about as much, but the conditions are favorable for tornadoes. And we also, the southern Missouri has between a 5 and 15% chance. So you can just, to say it in a more simpler way, about a 10% chance to see severe weather within a 25-mile radius. There also could very easily be a few rumbles of thunder in the St. Louis area. Even here in Chicago, we have it's a good possibility of seeing thunder here in the Chicago area at some point on Wednesday. Yesterday, I mentioned late Wednesday night. That might have been a mistake, but to tell you the truth, I've noticed that the things that tend to be forecasted first, those are the things that tend to come true. So, although I would put it more at Wednesday, I don't want to forget yesterday's podcast where I said Wednesday night, even late Wednesday night. Let's keep it at that. Keep it at that. My thinking would be more like Wednesday, but let's just, again, there seems to be a chazaka here that the words that come out first tend to be the most accurate. So that's a good possibility. The snow takes over really for our area Thursday. For many places Thursday, areas north of us like Milwaukee, Wisconsin might have the frozen precipitation starting already Wednesday night. Now, the deal with this low pressure system is the GFS model. The South Bend National Weather Service is calling this an outlier. The GFS model, which seems to say that they are leaning not towards the GFS. However, they also point out that the GFS is taking this more on a northward track and heavier, stronger. But the other models are also starting to take a more northward track. So, what exactly their conclusion is, whether they're concluding 50-50 or they're leaving the GFS, they're taking more of a European computer model side, that is a question. I don't know how to conclude with that. The Chicago National Weather Service is 50-50. There's no way they say there's no reason to take one computer model over the other, and therefore they simply don't know. The European computer model it limits the snow to the southeast portions of the county warning area, perhaps south and east of Chicago. Also, the amounts would be less. The GFS model puts snow, and it will be heavy snow in the northwest 2/3 of the county warning area. This includes the entire Chicago metropolitan area, says the National Weather Service of Chicago. Now, but let's go ahead to a National Weather Service that actually does have clarity. And for that, we have to go out west and south into Springfield, Missouri. Springfield, Missouri National Weather Service, they have clarity on the following. They have a forecast, a real forecast, that the heaviest snow in Missouri is going to be along and north of Interstate 44. The St. Louis National Weather Service also seems to indicate that. And then when you get into Illinois, along and north of Interstate 70, I know in Cincinnati, the Interstate 70, a lot of times that is a borderline between higher snowfall and lower snowfall or no snowfall. And I can't tell you much about it's above. Cincinnati's out of my field right now, so I can't tell you much about that. But maybe we'll look into that a little bit later. So we do have some clarity on Missouri that we're going to be seeing the heavier snow in the northern part of the state. There seems to be higher confidence in that. And in regards to what's exactly going to be happening as we move into Illinois, that's a little bit more uncertain. And then as we get into Indiana, I think it's even more uncertain. If we were to put numbers on it. Now, again, yesterday I mentioned 2 to 6 inches for the Chicago area, according to the European computer model. It's something noteworthy. just the things that tend to come out first tend to be the most accurate. So I want to point out the 2 to 6 inches from yesterday. At the same time, I would like to give an update, the real update. So keep the 2 to 6 inches in mind from yesterday. That might be the actual truth that's going to actually end up happening. But if we were to go with the science right now, and we were to give an update, we would say probably for the Chicago area 2 to 10 inches. Some of that I get from AccuWeather, to tell you the truth. But let me give you another explanation for that. The explanation for us not receiving a foot, the explanation that Chicago will remain under a foot is the following. According to one of the more advanced weather forecasters of AccuWeather, he said for the East Coast, the determining factor as to whether there's a foot or not a foot is the barometric pressure, the storm system, is it going to be 29.2? If the center of the storm is going to be 29.2 or less, then it's safe to go ahead and forecast a foot of snow. Now, last week, there were places that some isolated areas, they got more than a foot of snow. Was that last week? Maybe, I think it was 2 weeks ago, whenever that was. Now, a low pressure of 29.2, you cannot find anywhere within this country. What you could find is a gigantic front that was leading up to a low pressure all the way up north with that type of intensity. But there were other variables at play, and therefore you have that foot that fell over in certain areas. That was a storm system that was difficult to find. This one is a classic storm system. You can see it. You look at the map, you see it, it forms. Oh, for us, it's classic. For the West Coast, it's not. For us, it's classic. It's a panhandle hook. It develops over in Oklahoma, and then in Texas, the panhandle, and then it collides with serious Gulf moisture and an Arctic air mass as it moves northeast, either across the Tennessee Valley or the Ohio Valley. It might start off with a barometric pressure of somewhere between 29.6 and 29.8. By the time it hits Illinois, if you look on the weather map, it's already intensified to 29.4. 29.4, that's considered in the scientific forecast discussions, that's called a sub 1,000 millibar low. That's what they call it. I think sub 990 millibar low is considered really strong. But even sub 1,000 millibar low, it's a 29.5 already would be that, 29.4 as it crosses Illinois. The storm intensifies to 29.3 as it reaches the parts of the Great Lakes, and it continues to intensify to 29.2 already. According to the GFS model, it remains in this country. Perhaps it looks like New York, parts of that area, or New England, it's a 29.2. Now, I continued to follow the storm to see what happens after that, and it's just amazing. The storm continues to intensify. This is not Nogea, this part, because this doesn't have a connection to us, because this is after the storm has already departed the area. But this storm continues to intensify to 29.1, and then 29.0, 28.9. It continues to intensify according to the GFS, and even according to the European computer model. In fact, the European computer model, although it shows a weaker low pressure system over our area, it still shows a strengthening area of low pressure, and according to the European computer model, it actually, when all is said and done, the storm ends up more intense than the GFS. Okay? But the European computer model takes it out all the way out into the Atlantic Ocean. So, if we were to put numbers on it, the area, if we were to use that 29.2, what we can do with that is pretty limited. But we would have to say that it's safe to forecast a foot or more for places which are east of Illinois and Indiana. Places like in Michigan eastward, the bullseye should include a foot of snow. Whether it's just 12 or 12 to 18, well, when you consider some areas might even get lake effect enhancement or lake effect snow, probably 12 to 18 is safe to say. I saw some forecasts indicate in AccuWeather max up to 24 inches for those areas. That's the area where the storm is really going to be strong. But let's talk about here in the Midwest. Well, in the Midwest, we have different standards over here. On the East Coast, yeah, you need a 29.2. Here in the Midwest, I've seen storms of 29.4 produce more than a foot. So to say we're not going to get a foot is not so pashut. It's not so pashut at all. Again, if we were to stick with what's really going to happen, we would say 2 to 6. I would like to update that and say for the Chicago area, 2 to 8 inches. For South Bend, 1 to 10 inches. For Milwaukee, for the Chicago area, 2 to 10 inches. For Milwaukee, 2 to 8 inches. For South Bend, 1 to 10 inches. Denver, Colorado, 3 to 6. But that I don't really know much about. The sfekas in regards to this is really how quickly is the storm going to depart? That's a major question over here. And what will the strength of the storm be? And what will its storm track be? That's dependent upon another system coming out of Canada. Something going on in the Rockies. I don't have clarity on it, so I can't really explain that part. Okay? But the most important thing, if you want to understand this, is again the same thing that you hear every time. The track of the storm, the intensity of the storm, but the main thing really is the track of the storm, the depth of the cold air, how quickly will we see a changeover to snow. These are all questions. I want to add in one more thing. This is something that we have not seen in a long time. There's the possibility, there's a possibility. This storm carries with it a very real possibility of seeing actual blizzard conditions, even here in Chicago. Very strong winds. There's going to be an area which, strong likelihood, which will see pouring snow. And I take those words really from the national. Those words come from the National Weather Service in Chicago. They say it, pouring, snow, quote unquote, pouring snow. Okay, strong winds with 35 mile per hour blizzard conditions. So, what we have here is snowfall accumulations might be less than usual. To be 100% honest, there are forecasts which are indicating 8 to 14 inches, and they feel that it's going to be going north of Chicago. But and that's what the news is saying. Some of these but none of the forecasts that I can get a hold of are saying this. So, but it exists. There are news articles that are saying 8 to 14 inches. Let's come up with the maskana here. We have a low pressure system developing. This is called a panhandle hook. Ordinarily, the bullseye of panhandle hooks, as we pointed out many times in the Midwest, is 6 to 12 inches. On the East Coast, it's 12. These stronger nor'easters are 12 to 18 or 12 to 24 inches. The question always is, will Chicago be in the bullseye or will we not be in the bullseye? More often than not, Chicago ends up in the 3 to 6 inch range, with the north suburbs in the bullseye, the 6 to 12 inch range, and the south suburbs in the 1 to 3 inch range. However, each storm is different. This storm is starting off as rain, and the precipitation will change over to snow at some point. That might lower the snow totals. And the amount of water equivalent in the Chicago area will range from 7/10 of an inch in the northern sections to an inch in the southern sections. The St. Louis area, 2.5 inches. Areas south of Chicago, 2.5 inches. 1.5 to 2.5 inches. It's a difficult forecast. Lamaskana, it's a suffix all the way. Everything's a suffix. And there's not enough information to make a forecast. The storm is not too forecastable at this time, other than we will likely see the rain part is clear, and we will see a transition over to wintry precipitation in most likelihood, which may or may not accumulate. If it does accumulate, there's a good chance that we will see significant wintry precipitation with the system, and at the same time, there might be strong winds while that wintry precipitation falls. Thank you for listening. I wish everybody a good night.